Is it possible for somebody to grow up in Cincinnati and become a comedian? We're about to have that question, among many others, answered. Would you welcome, please, to our program, the funniest man in Ohio, Mr. Michael Flannery. Michael, good to see you. Does that make you nervous, being introduced as the funniest man in Ohio?
No, I just keep thinking that's pretty sad. This is as good as it gets.
Okay. You were voted that distinction by Showtime.
Showtime Television. It's a contest they do every year where they're searching for the funniest person in the country, in America. And so people submit videotapes of their performances, and of those tapes from Ohio, they got stuck with me.
Who came in second?
No idea. They don't tell you.
Was I in the running?
No, I think it had something to do with city council.
Oh, was it?
I think they were
I see.
close second.
Okay, I don't think I was considered a kind of a tonnage limit there. Okay, so what do your parents think about this?
They're real proud. I went to college, got a real job, worked my way up the corporate ladder, and went, no, I'd rather hang out in bars and tell jokes. So Dad couldn't be happier. He really had nothing to, didn't have much ground to stand on, because he's a pretty funny man himself. And
so he couldn't fault you for doing this?
No, he couldn't blame me at all. It's pretty much his fault.
You worked producing commercials for Warner Amex for a while.
Warner Amex.
How could you give that up to become a comedian, Michael?
All this? No, you know how glamorous it can be.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, you got me up at 8 this morning.
Well, you dress pretty glamorously.
Thank you very much.
Check out the outfit here. Shall we do that?
It's a rental.
Yes, is it? So
the socks are my favorite.
Yeah, I like the socks. They're very unobtrusive. Do you have to have the sneakers back to the Purina company at any particular time? What is that?
Got those from Indianapolis 500.
Okay, all right. So what made you try comedy the very first time?
The first time was when I was working at Warner, and a friend of mine who was doing comedy at the time, Greg Fraley, who's a comedian around Cincinnati, I talked to him about it, said I always wanted to try it and thought about it. He goes, oh, you should give it a try. I said, well, maybe. And he goes, why don't you come to see one of my shows? So I said, sure, and I went to the show, and he introduced me.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Called you up on the stage?
Yeah. So that was my first one. It's his fault.
Ooh. Well, how did that experience go?
That worked out all right. It wasn't, one of my better shows.
What do you do? What kind of material do you look at?
A lot of my stuff is from my family, large Irish Catholic family, and growing up here in Cincinnati.
Well, tell us about that.
Well, it's in Cincinnati. I like Cincinnati. One of the first parts that I wrote is when I was growing up in Cincinnati, as I liked those Jake Sweeney signs.
Yeah.
With the crew cuts and the ears sticking out, and he always had that spot on his lip. And I thought that was a mole.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's a bolt.
Were they fastened to the...
I met him. He's got a bolt sticking right there in his lip.
Michael. Cincinnati provides you with a lot of your material then.
I been living here since I was 8. I graduated from Xavier University.
When you were 8?
No, it was a little later than that.
Okay.
Better known as Camp Xavier, home for retired high school students.
What'd you major in there?
Radio television. Graduated in 2.5 years. It was a 2-year degree, but I still did it.
What do you hope to do? What is your fondest desire? Put on weight and do weather?
Exactly.
Yeah.
In front of glass.
That would work, yeah.
That or sell real estate on cable. It's one of the two things.
You're tacky, Michael.
Sorry.
What is it? Tell me, really, what do you want to do?
What I like about it is there isn't any limit. There's nothing that I have to stop at. It's like when you're in a business, you work your way up to the president of the company. That's pretty much where you go.
Well, you already are the president of your company.
I am president of my company.
So you ready to retire?
I'm going to kick back, get a little fishing property, and that's about it. But I can do television, eventually movies, national exposure, doing stand-up. Stand-up's fun.
But that's where you really put, E.D. White, the writer, once said writing a letter was like cutting along a nerve. I would have to think doing stand-up comedy very often is like cutting along a nerve. Sometimes it really clicks. Sometimes there are the excruciating times when it doesn't exactly click.
And every day is different. It's like when you have a job, and say you do good at your job and you're doing real well, and so you do something bad the next day or you mess up. It doesn't matter. They know you're good at your job.
Sure.
Except with comedy, you have good shows for months. You have one bad show, you're not a funny comedian.
I know.
Because like the stuff from the before.
What have you done pretty lately?
Exactly.
Syndrome, yeah. When you get together with other comedians, do you guys talk about your craft, or is it so nebulous, ambiguous, that it isn't possible to talk about your craft and compare notes?
As a matter of fact, for the very first time...
I'm trying to sound cerebral about this.
Sounds good. Well, I'm glad you asked that question, Ira. Because last month I went to a thing called Comedy Camp. were 10 of us comedians from across the country. There were fellows from Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, Cincinnati, Indianapolis.
We just go swimming and eat hot dogs?
We raided the girls' camp.
Well, good.
Sewed our name in our underwear, you know, the basic stuff. But we all sat around and wrote new material, and we were at a club where they let us do nothing but new material.
Wow.
So you didn't have the regular stuff you knew would work
Sure.
to fall back on. So whenever
Sure.
you're doing something new, if it didn't work, all you had was something else you didn't know
Ooh,
to do
yeah.
next. But it helped a lot. There were a lot of fellas. One of the guys was working on it, said he was going to do on Letterman, and coming up with new material for that. And it was a really good experience because we were all writing the whole week.
Yeah.
It
Is that
worked
what you
quite
do? You
well.
will sit down and write a routine for a stand-up monologue at a club?
I don't. I usually talk about things that happen to me every day.
But do you write it out as a script and then have it in your mind from that experience, or you just kind of wing it when you get out on the stage?
A mixture of both. I might write out an outline
Yeah.
of something I want
Okay.
to talk about. Now, at the comedy camp, we wrote everything out word for word, and it was a writing seminar, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
But usually I would just get up and think of something, and what I want to talk about.
Okay, I want to know, in closing this interview, you know, in all of the things you've done in show business, how big a thrill is it to be here on the show?
Well, you know I'm just all a
I know
quiver.
you're a quiver.
It was either the only other show that I would think of doing before yours would be Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. But they haven't called me yet. You're stuck with
And
me.
we've been plaguing you with phone calls. Michael Flannery, the funniest man in Ohio, and I
Thank you
agree
very much.
wholeheartedly. Wish you the best. Come back and see us. All right, Michael. We'll be right back.